Hello and welcome to segment or part 30, I believe it is. No, it could be 31. I don't know. It says on the title. But I just wanted to say it seems self evident that Syria has the wrong leader, Assad being someone who has used chemical weapons in the past several times and then uses other methods that are unacceptable to his people. Um, Needs some sort of, I don't want to use the word regime change. I want to use the word change in government. Something democratic and capitalistic would be far better for the Syrian people. How can this come about? Can there be talks? The Geneva talks they talked about. Can this happen? Is there a way so we can avoid a lot of misery or further misery? Actually, it's been 8 years, and I think that needs to change. Um, I, I I also would like to. I don't want to aggravate anyone or aggravate a situation, but Um, I think with Russia, it's going in the wrong direction. I noticed at the UN the label Russian Federation comes to mind. They use this on their nameplate. I believe Russia is an important country, a special country, but should also be just Russia, and then not just Russia, part of a new Soviet Union. NSU is what I like to call it, new Soviet Union. Democratic and capitalistic. Um, it's not that I don't like Putin, it's just that I don't think he's right for this day and age Russia, what Russia should be. Yes, it's a big country, and we know it's important. It always has been. Um, they're our ally in World War II, U.S., and I'm grateful. I think of the Battle of Kursk or whatever. I mean, they may have been very helpful. And then we say, with history is history, and past is past. And did it really happen like that? I don't know, but um, I remember them being our ally, and I, I like Russia. I'll say it, although I don't like current Russia. Um, Mostly because they have sanctions on them. Possibly, yes. I mean, there is good reason to, usurping Ukraine is unacceptable. Um, I see it may have been a move in altruism on Putin's part, because Ukraine is both east and west, and the western part speaks Russian. They lived together for years and years and years and years and years, um, in peace and harmony, and I think they should remain one Ukraine. It's very important. And then, you know, the the difference is that they're both European and uh, in a sense, and then also of the East, more of the Soviet Union or the new Soviet Union or whatever it shall be, will be. So that's why I think they should belong to both the EU and the Soviet Union. The problem is that until a new Soviet Union arrives that is democratic and capitalistic, um, I don't know if they can be part of the European Union. To do one before the other, it would be nice if this could happen simultaneously. Both these things happen at the same time. and a new Soviet Union arrives, democratic and capitalistic. I know this seems idealistic, but I truly believe it best for them. I'm not saying, oh, it's good for the U.S. or something like that, or it's good for the world. I'm saying it's good for them, firstly. Excuse me. But firstly, I think it's best for the, the the countries of the former Soviet Union, and to have something like the EU would be um, very good. I mean, Russia on equal footing with the rest of these countries, including Ukraine. I don't mean to make Ukraine, unequal with the other countries either, is what I'm thinking. Yes, they may be a good liaison to the East, and being part of the EU may bring good advantage to Russia and the rest of the new Soviet Union. So I think leaving that open, that they can be part of the EU and Soviet Union, is just a great thing. I think it to be a great thing. I'm not trying to um, bolster them or make them, more powerful than anyone else or anything like that. I'm just suggesting that equals is important. Um, I also, the UK did something great. I think helping us in France with this chemical weapons thing. It was limited to just chemical weapons. I hope no one was hurt. I mean, even that includes the military. I mean, I don't want anyone to have been hurt. Not a sprained ankle, not anything. We'll see what happened. There were no civilian casualties, at least, but I hope it was even more than that. Possibly no one was injured whatsoever, and that would be idyllic. That was not the intent of the attack, but to stop the chemical weapons program. Um, Preventing that war would be a nice thing. It's just that how do you do that? The UN suggests talks. I think a great answer. Um, I don't know if Assad would agree to what I've proposed, a democratic, capitalistic Syria. I mean, maybe they don't see that as happening overnight or whatever, but I think the world would definitely give them a hand in doing such a thing. The opposition may want this, the true opposition. Let's not kid ourselves that there are other forces in Syria, or there were, that were of ISIL or affiliate of Al Qaeda or Al Qaeda itself. Um, Without Syrian people being there, or the uh, the opposition, or the rebels, without them, there's a vacuum, and it's been suggested that that's why ISIL cropped up, and the affiliate of Al Qaeda cropped up. Um, so okay, so that's that. I think if there were a way, if Russia wasn't an autonomy, an autocracy, it just um, it lends itself to a dictatorship, and dictatorships, for the most part, don't work. I mean, even if you have someone benevolent, it can lead to problems. I don't have a problem with, say, Saudi Arabia being the way it is. The leader seems sound. He works with other people. But I might suggest to them something even further into democratic capitalism would be beneficial to them as well. Um, and like that. Um, so, um, I hate to say this. I mean, I know, he's enigmatic or whatever you want to call it, Putin, but not right for Russia, I think. It's just, I know they look to him for leadership and, um, the ability to, I think what Russia needs is a president, and it needs um, a more a government again, democratic and capitalistic. I know that he would be resistant to this possibly because he is his roots were in the KGB, and KGB was against the philosophies of or the ideology of the U.S. and it may be ingrained in him. I mean, he may have been put through so much. I mean, we were also the Americans. If we even sympathized with Russia and the former Soviet Union, we sympathized with them. We felt bad for them or something. We wished things were different for them or something. Um, Back in the 50s, this was a long time ago, but to sympathize was meant that you were blacklisted and you were compos mentis or not seen as someone that could be trusted in the United States. And sometimes you couldn't find work in your profession, your chosen profession, something that you're even good at. So we took a blow there too. It may not have seemed like it, but um, being on edge, I think also happened in the Cold War. Just the fact that we were adversaries, and then I think silently we felt bad for the Soviet Union. Just the fact that they were cut off by sanctions or financially, squelched until a democracy arrived. Yeltsin, I give great praise to. Um, I miss him. I think he was a jovial, charismatic leader that knew what was best. He also had something to say about the Bosnian War. He had concerns about it. Um, I I miss that ray of light that we had, that the democracy had started. KGB may not have been having it. That they were ingrained not to accept the West way, and um, I don't fault them for it. Although um, it shouldn't have been negated. This democracy, I mean, wasn't. They didn't have it set up correctly, and there was corruption, or was there corruption because they rejected democracy and capitalism? I don't know. Perhaps we should look back and see, or perhaps it's none of our business. But I think capitalism and democracy should be part of Russia and the new Soviet Union. Okay, so enough about that. I think that it needs to change. I don't know how. I don't know how that would come about. The election was a farce. There was no one. There was a contender against Putin in the running. We've had some problems with Russia, with hacking. That may be the state of affairs of what has happened to the United States to say, see, look, the U.S. doesn't work so well. And then the other factor is blackmail the president into lifting sanctions. Is their methodology perhaps a theory, albeit, although the hacking has been proven into the election, swaying people, the hearts and minds of people to elect Trump, and then the blackmail of Trump. This all needs to be proven. What happened? I don't hold anything against Trump, although he may have to answer for something. I think what he did recently was noble and just, and fortunately, I don't know all the facts or the wherefores, but no one was hurt, so that's good. Um, did we not go far enough? The war machine being dismantled, more so. Tell them evacuate, and then it's just about the military machine, the all the things that go along with the planes, the airfields, the tanks, the weaponry, all of that, evacuate the area and destroy it. But then we're obligated to, the new government of Syria and make sure they're in power and have weaponry and all of that. That would have to happen. And they'd have to be trusted. They'd have to, we need to trust them, the new government of Syria. Again, I'm talking about hypotheticals, but I think it needs to happen, and it may be inevitable. I don't want to see more fighting. It just isn't right, and Syrians are fleeing, refugee problem. Then we can also get in the mix, someone from an extremist group poses as a Syrian, and they're relocated, and they're actually a mass bomber or something like that. We don't need these things in the world. We need this to be resolved. So it does affect other countries. Let's not kid ourselves that it doesn't. Syria is not just Syria and Syria's problem, but it's also the world's problem. So it needs to be resolved, and hopefully by peaceful means, discourse, talking, solve it. I saw many of Assad's army or the regime celebrating that it wasn't so bad and they were fine. They were resilient to our advances or whatever it was. I don't think they should celebrate being what they are now. It's just not, you know, it's not moral to kill women, children, and innocent men, non-combatants, and all of this, and then the chemical weapons, using the barrel bomb. I mean, this is not acceptable. That may need to be a red line too. So there are things that need to stop and change in Syria, for the rest of the world as well. I mean, there's a good argument that it's not good for the rest of the world, and then just for humanitarian reasons, it needs to stop. Okay, I'm going to change gears. Maybe I'll make this another segment just because it's a different topic. So I'll just go. Well, I'll just go into it, I guess. The next part is my question posed before, regarding Palestine and Israel and Jerusalem and the people of Jerusalem, the future people of Jerusalem, these sites and whatnot, organizing a peace accord. Who is it? I'm asking the question now. given them some time to think, to deliberate over this matter. I would like to know, as a citizen of Earth, if it makes any sense, who is resilient or resistant to talks. I mean, even just a one-party talk, Israel meeting with the UN, is the UN resistant? Unless they ask for help, we're not going to. I mean, are they not being forthcoming enough and saying, look, this needs to happen. We need to talk with someone. Um, that's all I'm saying is talk. Start the process again. They can, say, no, we don't agree with that, whatever, and then maybe further talks and further talks. I mean, this needs to happen. Peace needs to happen. It is very important. I don't like what's going on with Palestine. I mean, I understand they need to protest and say, Gaza is being squelched. We have land that has become settlements of Israel. Unfairly so, but protest away from the wall is what I strongly suggest, and it's not a suggestion really. It's a needed thing. It needs to be away if there's going to be peaceful protest away from the wall. It's provocative if it's near the wall. If people are trying to tear down the wall, that's not the way to go about it. Only talks, peaceful talks, are acceptable, and I don't think, history, said that, using attacks and whatnot into Israel wasn't going to solve it. It's getting the map right and the parties agreeing on something. I think that the only solution is a two-state solution. So who is it that is resistant? Is it the Palestinians? Is it both? Is it the Israelis? Is it people of Jerusalem that are resisting this transition to peace? Is it the UN that's not being? I mean, they said they're ready to talk, but is that enough? Do they have to intercede? Do they have jurisdiction to insist and be insistent about it? Say, look, this is very important. We need to talk with at least one party at a time about the situation, the current situation. I think the solution is a multi-ethnic Jerusalem. I know that may not sit well with people, but that's what it is right now. And for Israel to take control of Jerusalem is just not fair, because there are sites and places where Palestinians should be and should live in harmony and, getting along. I express some of these things about how they should get along and what needs to be done. But it needs to be a reality. I mean, discrimination, hate, dislike for, saying it's going to, hurt our way of life or something. I mean, Israel is Israel, and it can't have its borders. But Jerusalem, even though it's a capital city of both, I see it as a capital city of Palestine and of Israel. It needs to, excuse me a minute. In essence, it needs to be multi-ethnic. That is, Israeli and Palestinians living side by side in Jerusalem, and the others. I mean, agnostics, those who wonder about God or religion. They are there. They shouldn't have to leave. Atheists even have a right not to believe there's a God. I think that's an acceptable thing. They're there too. So I'm told. I believe there are. I do believe this to be a fact. And then what about the Christian community? Isn't it significant to them as well? I'm not saying there should be a great influx of them, because it is basically Palestine and Israel's territory, but there are Christians that live there, and they find the Church of the Holy Sepulchre to be significant. My ideology of it is that things didn't quite happen as stated, but there may have been, at Calvary, a great speech by Christ. Did it happen or not? I don't know. I say Christ, I should say Jesus, because some disagree that he's the Messiah. It is his, in a sense, last name, and so whether it's happened or not, he should be something of significance. I'm not saying better or worse than, I say a guise of God. You know, Jesus is Jesus and Muhammad is Muhammad, but, um, King David is King David, but they may be all one, all God. So I think it's possible for God to have more than one guise, and God being firstly what He is, and Allah also maybe slightly different than being God, or they can look at it as God, um, the first, and there are many other things that I believe God is. These are my beliefs. Maybe 100 different guises or personas or something like that. I mean, things of mythology, things of fiction we know of may actually be the truth about God, but firstly, He's God, and that's what I believe. But as for talks, I want to know, I think it needs to be known who is resistant to talking, or is it the UN that's not being uh, enticing enough to get them to talk, even if it's far away? I mean, out of the Middle East, they meet somewhere else, somewhere distant from the Mideast, and meet with one party first, and the other. Subtle diplomacy I mentioned. It does work. I have seen it work in Bosnia. And then there's also special envoy is another phrase that's used from the UN to talk, to explain what should happen, or to at least propose something. Um, and I know that they may be resistant at first, but it should be self-evident what should happen. And we need to be moral about this, and an era of caring for other life, other people. So that's my take on it. I'd like to know who is resistant to it, and if there is no one resistant to it, then why doesn't it happen? Why aren't there talks now? We need to accelerate the process, get this going. I don't like what I see as far as near the fence. Using, could they use rubber bullets? I mean, is that enough? That's still violent. I don't recommend. I strongly disapprove of by the fence demonstrating. You have people that want to demonstrate peacefully, and yet there are people that don't want to, that want to pull down the fence and to put them together and then have innocents hurt, or using children in this way. It's just not acceptable. This needs to be resolved through talk, through discourse, and the UN I look to as a great broker of this, and I've said it enough, so I'm going to go. Have a great day. It's Sunday here. I hope you have a good one, or had a good one. It's a new week, a new start. I don't like. I mean, I've seen things that it looks like there are threats, and from we need peace. We don't need more, escalation just because we did this thing about chemicals. Um, it doesn't mean things need to escalate. I think it's a good time to take pause and to rethink things. Syria being on the table is peace. I think that can happen. The Geneva Convention, the Geneva Accord, I believe it's called the Geneva Accord, states that it can be resolved peacefully and with talk, with dialogue, wherever it suits them to meet. And so I've said enough, but please give this serious thought. These changes need to take place eventually, if not sooner. Most soon um, is best. Okay, thank you and goodbye. Have a good day.